Well, as these things often go in the computer world, when you don't know what the issue is, you stop and restart and see what happens. So, from my shop, it feeds to Max, which is kind of the control room. And then from Max, it goes to you. And he said his image is a little more clear now. I like Richard's comment. You look like you're entering a transporter beam when you walk, which I wish I could enter a transporter beam because it's about 20 degrees in Wisconsin today, and I would transport to Hawaii maybe, or someplace warm. So, but he thought this would be, Max thought we were cooking better now. So we'll go from here. So we do have a question here. What type of drill press table do you have? I'm going to show you because I really, really, really like it. And my shop is a mess because it's, like kind of the holiday season and there are boxes everywhere. But I will get you there. So let's do this. And I think I'll maybe just stop about there and then I can zoom you. Okay, and I'm going to kick this light on so it's easier to see. So probably a year ago or more, I upgraded to this woodpecker system, and there are a bunch of things I really like about this. Historically, the cast iron table is here. Historically, with drill presses, the problem has been they're set up really well for metalworking. They're not set up so great for woodworking. So this whole system bolts on top of the drill press table, and it gives me a couple different things. Table by itself is better. There maybe, you can sort of see it right there. There's a replaceable 1/2-inch MDF insert here. So if I do drill all the way through, which you're gonna do, this acts as a sacrificial board to support the backside of the cut. It's got wings out here on the side that can be extended. So that's helpful if you've ever tried to drill like adjustable shelf holes in a case side on a drill press. It's pretty easy for that to get wackadoo because you don't have any support out here. So these wings come out. The fence is very, very incredible. It's in T-tracks in the table. So a couple of knobs hold it in place. It locks very, very securely. It's got stops on it. And of course I can move those. So for repeatable hole drilling, it gives me that. One of the things I like about it the most, it's got dust collection built in. So there's a port here, and then there's a pickup for a shot vacuum here. So not so much, if I'm gonna walk over here and do an 1/8-inch hole, I'm probably not gonna hook up my shot vacuum. If I'm gonna do 35 millimeter holes for European hardware or anything with a Forstner bit, I am gonna engage the shot vacuum. And it's absolutely amazing how much stuff this picks up. It saves so much housekeeping later. It's also got a drawer here. So commonly used stuff ends up in the drawer. So again, that's Woodpecker's drill press table system. I really, really, really like it a lot. Very happy with that upgrade. Okay. Kevin asks, can you give some tips on removing glue from wood that needs to be stained? Do you have some tips on how to control glue smears? So a couple things. This is a case where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So for me, I've got chisels back here on this rack. A number of these are my joinery chisels. 2 of these are my glue chisels. So for glue chisels, I'm really not concerned about the quality of the chisel. I don't care if this can hold an edge, because I'm not using it to chop dovetails. I sharpen these on a belt sander. So I want an edge. I'm not worried about having a perfect edge. So the way these figure into this question is, I'm not a fan of wiping glue with a wet rag. There's one occasion in which I will do that, and I'll tell you what it is. I am a fan of allowing glue to dry to a rubbery condition, a rubbery state, and then grabbing a glue chisel and slicing it away. So that rubbery state is maybe 10 or 15 minutes after you do a glue up, the squeeze out will be rubbery like that. You got to gauge it. It's going to depend on temperature and humidity conditions in your shop. If you go too soon, if you touch a bead of glue and it kind of bursts like a blister into a puddle, you're too early. If you go after a bead of glue and you really have to work to get it off, then you waited too long and you let the glue get too hard. So there's like the analogy I often use is it's about the consistency of caulk that has dried, where then the caulk is kind of rubbery and you can slice it away from the surface. That's what we're looking for from the glue. So whether it is an edge-to-edge glue up or a mortise and tenon where there's been a little squeeze out, I'm letting it get to that condition. I'm letting it get to that rubbery state, and then I'm coming with a chisel and slicing. The other thing I do use is if I've got a lot of glue beads, and this isn't really about the smears, so hang on just one second. If I've done an edge-to-edge glue up, and I know that's going to go through the planer next, then I might leave those glue beads on there, and then I just use a scraper, and a paint scraper works fine. This particular one is a Rockler product. But I use that scraper and pull that across the glue beads before I send that through a planer. And that's not a finishing thing, that's a protecting your planer from really, really hard glue. If you've got steel knives in your planer, glue beads can chip the knives. So I use a scraper to knock off dried glue beads, but I don't want to do that if I'm not going through a planer, because that's too aggressive. So again, it's that rubbery condition. The one scenario where I'm willing to wipe glue is something like an end grain cutting board. Because if I've got glue beads on here, and I take a damp rag and I wipe the surface and I smear the glue around, and I'm leaving glue, diluted glue from the wet rag is being left everywhere, that's okay. Because on something like an end grain cutting board, you're going to do a boatload of surfacing on this before it's done and ready to be whatever you want it to be. So the fact that I'm smearing glue into the surface doesn't bother me, because so much surfacing is going to happen after the fact that we're going to eliminate that glue stained wood. The other thing you can do to avoid running into the scenario where, whoop, there's glue, in other words, at the point where you're putting finish on, is if you put mineral spirits on a rag and wipe your project, you'll be able to see spots where there'll be a difference between raw wood and spots where there's glue residue. The mineral spirits wipe will show you that. So that way you find out before you get to the finishing step. I got to look now. I talked so long to make sure I got to look and make sure I answered the question. Control glue smears. Yeah. So the big thing is don't wipe it with a wet rag. Use this technique of slicing it with a chisel after it starts to get to the glue stage. All right, looks like, is the video still kerflooey? AJ says we're kerflooey. All right, well, I'm just gonna Talk. All right. Sorry so if there are ongoing issues, I apologize for that. And this is live stream number 3 today and everything went great. Oh, here's Max is talking to me. Okay. So Max is working on stuff behind the scenes. Here we go. Elizabeth asks, I have a table where I'm trying to attach legs that are 3.5 inches. I'm going to attach them to the skirt for stability. I'm having trouble finding 3.5 to 3.25 inch wood screws. What do you suggest I do? Well, boy, I'm surprised. I'm trying to think of just like home center. So my screw drawer is over there and I could go and look, but I'm reasonably sure I have 3.5 inch like deck screws. So maybe that's the answer is at a home center, at a hardware store, don't look in the wood screw section necessarily, but look in the like outdoor fastener section, and I think you're going to find them. I really feel like I've seen deck screws 3.5, 4 inches long, and there's nothing wrong with going with using those deck screws in your woodworking project. They're going to be fine. You can still you can find flathead, which is the funnel shape, flathead deck screws, so that should work for you. I mean, it makes me kind of want to jump on my phone and look at Amazon, but just change your category of search from wood screws to deck screws. I think you'll get them. All right, Jim says, I've got a 14-inch jet bandsaw. Saw your presentation at Weekend with Wood a couple times, watched the video. The bearing behind the blade in the top set of guides keeps coming loose. I can only make 1 or 2 cuts before it starts walking. I finally used a towel and channel locks to tighten the knob, and it's not come loose yet and is cutting fine. Is that normally how it needs to be tightened? I can tighten all the rest, top and bottom, with my fingers, and they stay tight. No, I mean, if it's a knob on any tool, it shouldn't take pliers. You know, it's either typically an Allen-headed screw or it's some kind of a thumb screw. So it's interesting that it's only that one. I would, I got to make sure I'm getting this right. I think if you put a drop of blue thread lock on the internal threads and then run it in there, maybe that'll help to where you can finger tighten it like you do everything else, but that thread lock that's in there will give you enough bite that it won't vibrate loose. I mean, it would drive me crazy to have to grab a tool on what's supposed to be a tool-free tool. It would drive me crazy to have to grab a tool every time I had to make an adjustment on that thing. So I would try blue thread lock, and the key to that is blue is the stuff that adds some bite to the threads, it adds some resistance, but it's reversible. Red thread lock is a way more rigid connection. I wouldn't use red in that application where you know you're going to be making frequent adjustments. So try blue thread lock on that. Andy says, I need to make keys for small boxes to strengthen the miter joints, like 6 by 3 by 1 1/4. I need to cut 1 32nd thick strips to get around, yes. I need to cut 1 32nd thick strips to get to around 1/8 inch overall. Best and easiest way to make a safe cut for this. All right. Let me show you. This is a great table saw technique. My table saw is kind of a mess. Don't judge me. There we are. All right, this is going to take a second for me to get set up correctly. Here's what we're going to do. Simplest thin rip table saw jig ever. It's a board of some set width. In my case, it's 10 inches wide. And the key to it is here on the back, there's a hook that's glued on. The hook can just be 1/4 inch thick, whatever, masonite, plywood, whatever you've got. When you want to make a really thin cut, you set your fence. So we can set to 10 and a 32nd. This goes against the fence. I'm going to open up just a little. This goes against the fence. Your material goes against the jig, and then everything goes past the blade together. So let me make sure I have enough foot on the end there to still engage. I think I'm okay. Oh, my blade was set a little shallow. See how thin that is? So the beauty of this is, if that's not the right size, you just move your rip fence and readjust, make another cut until you get this to the right size. But that's a very, very, very easy way to make thin stuff. With the foot on the tail end of the jig, make sure you glue that on, don't nail it on or use a screw, because you're going to cut through it. So if it starts a 1/4 inch thick and then we go to do a 1/32 spline like this, then obviously we're going to cut through that 1/4 inch hook. Over time, you'll put a new hook on there and just glue a new one on. If you've cut through it so many times it's not engaging anymore, then just put a new one on. Oops, that's too far. Good casters. Make sure I got that answered. I need to cut 1/32 strips to get to around 1/8 inch overall. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like video things may have been a tiny bit kerflooey there for a little bit, but we should be back up and running again. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to revisit a couple things that we talked about at the top of the hour. One, as always, thanks to Typebond for underwriting our live stream, our Thursday live stream, and making sure that this stays free for all of you. Another thing, speaking of free, Santa Claus is coming to town. And so we have put together for you a 10 gift idea project packet. So where you're looking, where you're watching the video, just scroll down a little bit, and right there, woodworking gift ideas. You can click on that and get those free plans. Speaking of that, you might want to decorate a tree at this time of year. So one of the things I did, a live stream I did this morning, was using standard everyday cookie cutters, steal those from the kitchen. And you can use those to make epoxy ornaments like this. So Max can put the link up for that live stream that we did this morning. Once you've used these for epoxy, don't put them back in the kitchen for cookie cutters. They become kind of shop specific at that point. Couple things I like about this. It's fun to do, and you can get a lot of ornaments done in a short amount of time. I think I've got 5 or 10 Christmas-shaped cookie cutters that we use for this. And it's a great thing if you've got kids around, AJ. It's a great thing for kids to do with you. They can help mix the epoxy. They can help come up with the color patterns for this. And it's a very, very simple process to make these. So along with the live stream, there's a PDF, and it's got the stuff source, the epoxy I used, the coloring agents, everything is there. So that, and then a video that we shot a couple months ago, it was so much fun. I like talking about it. As you know, Jimmy DiResta was here. He did the Thursday Live with me. And one of the things we did while he was here was a video about turning old table saw blades into knives. So we each made a knife, and it was a little, you know, it had a little forged in fire feel to it. Not that we were competing and we weren't under the clock or under the gun for time, but some friendly banter back and forth. We were both kind of watching what the other guy was doing. So my show and tell, this is the knife that I made from a table saw blade. Jimmy's was a little bit different style. That video came out just a little while ago. It's a free video. And one, it's just fun to watch because there's a lot of banter back and forth between Jimmy and I. Two, if you've got old table saw blades laying around your shop, this is a great way to make them into something that you can get some use out of. So it was very fun to do. And like I said, it's a very fun video, I think. Okay. I'm scrolling, want to make sure I haven't missed somebody. So Richard says, maybe somebody else at your location is streaming or playing video games. Yeah, no. One, nobody else here. Two, this building has upload bandwidth like nobody's business. We could have 14 people playing video games and watching Netflix, doing all of the above, and we'd still be okay because the upload speed from here is it's like a fire hose feeding out of this building. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting caught up with our little bit of kerfluiness. All right, we're set. Looks like we're back. One of the other announcement things I wanted to do was people have asked about classes, and as many of you know, because I've seen you there, the mind blank. Stan Houston Equipment Show is on for this February. So that is the weekend of February 17th-ish, whatever the Saturday, Friday, Saturday is. Those are the 2 days for that show. So I'll be in Sioux Falls for that event. And then I'm back at Mark Adams School again in May of next year. And that's that week-long cabinet making class. So if you're not familiar, Mark Adams has an amazing school in Indiana. And in that particular class, everybody hands-on builds a floor model cabinet in the style that you would use to do base cabinets in your house. It's got 2 doors on it. It's got a drawer in it. So it's really a full gamut of cabinet making techniques. It's a face frame style cabinet, so you get that out of it. And then, of course, the drawer construction, the door construction, how to hang the doors. So again, that week-long 5-day cabinet making class is in May at the Mark Adams School in Indiana. What was the other thing? This is your opportunity to ask woodworking questions. It's maybe because of our tech issues, I typically end up with more questions than I can get to in an hour. And this hour, we're running a little short. So now I'm tap dancing. I'm trying to think of, I'll show you another cool thing I'm working on. Talking about knives from saw blades. Hang on, I'm coming back. So I started with a big old blade like this. And we were just talking about knives from saw blades. This is not a carbide tipped blade. This is a steel blade. So the difference is going to be on a carbide tipped blade, the hardness is going to come from the carbide on the teeth. On a steel blade like this, the whole blade most likely has more hardness factor going for it. Just like on a handsaw, where, you know, yes, we're doing the cutting with the teeth, but as we sharpen, we're getting deeper and deeper into the steel of the blade. So we also have to have a hardness factor here. So the downside to what Jimmy and I did, and we talked about this on that video, is that don't go into the wilderness expecting to survive on this knife, because this came from a carbide tip saw blade. So as a result, the steel is pretty good, but it's not great. It might not hold an edge very well. On a blade like this, the hardness, the temper of this plate is going to be way better. So where I'm going with this is, for my sister, for Christmas, I'm making her an ulu. So I cut this from a blade that looked exactly like this. And then once it was cut to shape, I polished it to get the rust off of there. The masking tape is on there now because I'm starting to generate the cutting edge, and I don't want to hurt myself as I'm working with the blank. So next step on this is we've done some knife handling on videos, putting a handle on a knife. And I've got my handle blank here, which is a mix of madrone wood and epoxy. The blue is, of course, epoxy. So this is almost ready to go on here. And the way I do this, anytime I'm putting a handle on a knife, get it the right way, is I do as much machining as possible to the handle blank while it's still in one piece. Those brass pins, that's actually brazing rod, and the brass pins are going to register it when I'm ready for that. They're going to register it to the ulu. But I'm going to do as much machining as I can while this is one chunk. And it's just about to a point where I'll go to the bandsaw, I'll split that in two, I'll sand those two surfaces so they're nice and flat, and then I'll glue those one on each side of the steel with epoxy. And then plus have the pins in there to register it, like I said. So this has been a very fun process, and this is a much higher quality steel than what we have here. I can tell just from the way as I'm working on it, I'm working on the edges, I can tell by the spark pattern off of it. I can tell by running a file over it that this is a much harder, much better quality steel than what I've got this one made out of. But it's very cool. I'm excited about it. And then the reason this is here, this end grain board, is along with the ulu, I'm going to give her an end grain cutting board, which on the CNC I've dished out. So when one is using an ulu, it's kind of this is how you chop. So I'm going to make a dish in this that's a little bit larger than the radius of the knife, so that, you know, you throw your onions in there and then you just do this in the dish. And I think it's the visual of that's going to be pretty cool. The visual being, when this is dished out and finished out of this end grain walnut, I think that's going to be pretty dynamic, pretty. And then I'm so excited about that one, I just started making one for myself too. So I've got two of those in the hopper. That one has a deadline. The one I'm making for me does not have a deadline. It's, you know, the cobbler's kids go without shoes. So the woodworker's house has the least amount of woodworking in it. Hal says, if there are hairline gaps in a cutting board glue up, what do you recommend to fill? CA glue, epoxy, type on 3 and sawdust? I would lean toward CA glue if they're hairline. And one of the things I've been using more, I'm trying to see if it's right there, Starbond CA glue comes in clear and brown and black. So if you've got a cutting board, if you don't want to introduce color, you can just put clear on. But if you do, like if I had a hairline crack in that walnut I just showed you, I would want to fill that with a brown or a black, because that would blend better once I have finish on there. But yeah, CA glue would be a great choice for that. Jim says, haven't seen the knife video. What do you cut the blade with? An angle grinder and a cutoff wheel. So it's interesting. You have to be patient and go slowly. This has a curve in it, and I had a 4.5-inch cutoff wheel in an angle grinder. So you can't, quite cut a flowing curve. You end up with a fairly large kerf to work the cutoff wheel around. The thinner the material is, table saw blade plates are pretty thin. The thinner the material is, the easier that is to do. When I made the ulu, which is sneaking up on 1/8-inch thick metal, that was much more careful work with the cutoff wheel to get that cut out. And then, of course, you follow that with cleaning all those edges up to get them to turn that into a fair curve after the work you've done with the cutoff wheel. Johnny says, I'm making an 18-foot long live edge slab out of 2 10-foot long slabs. How would you join them to make them look as one solid slab? So there are a couple, it depends. Is it shipping as one 18-foot long slab, or are you going to take it out as 2 9s and then join it on site? If you're going to join it on site, you can get a knockdown fastener that works with a Festool domino that's absolutely amazing. You cut a slot and a slot, and that's how it engages. And then once you're in place, you get under that, you put the fastener in there, you tighten, and it draws stuff together with incredible strength and durability. So that would be one way to do it. Excuse me. Alternatively, if you're gonna actually rigidly fasten them together in your shop, some kind of loose tenon needs to go in there. And because of the length of what you're talking about, and you're going to be handling this out of your shop and into a job site or a home or whatever it is, I would want a pretty robust loose tenon in there. So if you've got a domino, using very thick, very long, a number of very thick, very long dominoes would be a great way to go to provide some structure inside that scene. Alternatively, you could do that with a dowel jig and dowels, but I would definitely want something, all of those dowels, tenons, biscuits are all examples of loose tenons. I would want some kind of loose tenon in there. Biscuits, I don't think would be robust enough for the scale of what you're talking about. Okay. Well, we're winding down on questions. So I'll hit on a couple things one more time. One is, don't forget to grab that gift guide PDF that we've made available for you. You can click on that, get that PDF, print that out. Don't forget, if you want to have a look at it, to watch the live. Their ornaments are under that big blade. where I made epoxy Christmas tree ornaments using cookie cutters and, of course, epoxy. Don't forget to watch the knife from a saw blade video, which was a lot of fun to make and even more fun to watch. And I'm having one last look here. Oops. All right. Well, that's all our questions for today. So I will not see you folks before Christmas and New Year's. Have a great Christmas, a great New Year. And I will see you when we have our first live in January, the second Thursday in January. See you then.